So let me explain what you see on the board. So we call this box in anger management the problem-solving box. This is where you want to reign. So we're having an okay day. A problem comes up, whether it's situational or relational, and tension starts to build. Here is where you need to think about your physical symptoms, which is why it's so important. Because this is where the stress starts, when the tension builds. Now, sometimes we don't pay attention to that, so we get into conflict. When we get into the conflict, sometimes, depending on what we're dealing with, we might think, you know what, I'm not handling this very well, or I'm feeling a bit of tension. I'm going to go into this problem-solving area. And this is where you would use some of your stress-reducing activities, hopefully some that I'm going to give you tonight. Or you get into problem-solving. You might assert yourself and have a conversation with this person. But your thinking is still relatively clear at this point. However, if we continue to ignore this, the physical symptoms that's going on in our body, and not paying attention to that heart pounding, we can come out of that box and go straight into DPA, where we can't even think straight. And that's where reaction occurs. So this is so important, and I've given you a visual so that when you're dealing with stresses in your day, you will know where you are in this box. Am I in the box or have I come out? And even if you have come out, sometimes, even if you've just come out and you've lost it with someone, we can, at this point, go to the problem solving, or in this case, it's probably a timeout at this point. Because we're not really in a good position to really think it through, so a timeout is probably the best thing that you can do when you've come out the box. But most often, when people have come out the box, they go straight into DPA, they're screaming and shouting, they've gone into this reaction mode, and then they take the time out, and by then it's too late, because you've already done some damage. One thing that you need to be aware of is when you hit this, it takes 20 minutes to an hour to calm down. So imagine some of the conversations that you're having, and you've entered into this realm. You need to move away from that conversation, because your brain is not able to think clearly at this point, because all the emotions have hijacked the thinking part of the brain. You may not even realize what you've done at this point. Also, men, unfortunately, take longer to calm down than women. So especially with your spouses or with your male friends, and this is what happens a lot in domestic violence, the women won't let go. They follow their husbands into different rooms, or they try to have conversations with them because they're calm, but they're not paying attention to what's going on with their spouse. And they take longer to calm down than you do. But I also will add, if you have a history of angry outbursts, it could take you longer than an hour. And it may be only with certain situations. But you need to pay attention to this. And this image should help you when you get into stressful situations. Have I paid attention to this? Where am I in this problem-solving box? Let's talk about some day-to-day things. You know these things, but we often just ignore them. And again, the goal is to alleviate some of the stress. So breaks, exercise, and sunlight. If you're dealing with high levels of stress, you should be exercising at least 3 days a week. 3 days a week. If you are not, then you need to put a plan in place. Also with that is, if you're not exercising, you've got all this nervous energy in your body, and it will not get released, so it's going to stay in there. And I always think about it as being like toxic waste. when that can breaks open, it kills everything it touches. Well, that's kind of what stress is doing to you. It's affecting you physically and it's affecting you emotionally. And it can really do some damage if you don't pay attention. If you're unable to take breaks at lunchtime, then try and take 5-minute break intervals throughout the day. Even if it means you just have to go to the bathroom, it's a break. You know, one of the things that they have found about smokers is their stress responses are a lot lower than those who don't smoke. Because what do? They have to go out and have a cigarette. Not only that, they're socializing with other people while they're having that cigarette. Now, I'm not saying you should go and start smoking, but what I am saying, you want to learn to be able to take those kinds of breaks. Also, if you're dealing with high amount of anxiety and depression, you need sunlight, and they say 15 minutes of sunlight a day. And for some of us, we're going from the house to the car to work to the car back to the house. We haven't seen any natural light. Mm-hmm. And if you're dealing with a lot of depression or anxiety, you need that sunlight. So pay attention to that. And look, you've got 3 things that you can do at the same time. You could take a break, you could go for a walk, and you could get some sunlight. And I know some of you are doing that, but some of us forget the need for it on a daily basis, and you need to incorporate it in your day. Diet. I've given you a diet sheet because you need to fuel your stress when it comes, and a poor diet will actually intensify your stress responses. And the foods that I've given you are quick foods that you can take when you're heading into stressful situations. Because generally when the stress response kicks in, we have poor digestion, as well as we will crave sugar and carbs, which don't last. So think about some of the foods on the list. What you can eat ahead of time as you get potentially going into this stressful situation. You know, even tonight, I had a yogurt so my brain could keep running. Because yogurt is good for the brain. And so I had a yogurt so my brain could keep running. What I didn't want to do is have caffeine, because that will intensify my stress response. And I've seen people go into meetings with a cup of coffee. You know, have decaf and then have your fully loaded coffee after the meeting, because it will increase your stress response. Some of you talked about eating too much, and some of us do tend to eat more when we get stressed. And you need to be aware that your body knows it's full 20 minutes before your brain knows. So your body knows it's full, but often we ignore it, even if it feels uncomfortable. And that's partly because the brain hasn't registered yet that it's full, but your body knows. Chocolate is a great de-stressor, which I am so happy about. So when I get grouchy, my husband brings me a bar of chocolate, because it has the same chemical release as you falling in love with someone. So it's worth having chocolate.
That's not on here.
It's not on here? No, I haven't put it on there because I don't want to increase your weight gain or bad teeth. But I do say that it does
not on here.
So, in moderation, shall we say in moderation, but it is a good de-stressor. Sleep and rest. We know about it. Some of you deal with insomnia. But numerous studies have shown that sleep deprivation has the same effect as being under the influence of alcohol. So at 0.8, you are over the limit. You are drunk, basically. Between 0.3 and 0.4, both your driving and your judgment is impaired. If you lose 2 hours of sleep, you're at 0.5. That's not very far from being over the limit if you drank some alcohol. So think about that when you get up the next day and you have a full day. if my judgment is impaired, and more so because you're at 0.5, maybe I should tackle the easier tasks today and do the harder tasks tomorrow. Now I know for some of you, you don't even have that choice. You have to tackle all the hard tasks, right? But maybe you can think about getting some help with those harder tasks, because at this point you're not functioning as well as you could. Okay, managing our time. And in this day and age, it is hard, is it not? We try and cram everything into a small amount of time. But one of the areas that have been effective both in stress management but also in the business world is what we call the SMART goal. Can you see that, Nikki? Okay. And you can do this with activities at home. You can also do that at work. There are many variations of this, but the reason why I like this one is because it has a reward system. And I know some of you say, well, I'm good at setting goals, but I'm not really good at completing them. And there's a reason for that. And research has shown that if you set 3 goals, you are more than likely to complete them. If you set 4 goals, you're more than likely only complete 2. And if you set 5 goals, you're more than likely only complete 1. So if you have a huge project, try to break it down into small chunks and set 3 goals, because you're more than likely to complete it. What often happens is you have this big project or you have this big task, and we've got all these goals and we don't complete them. And it gets stressful, we get frustrated with ourselves, our confidence goes. So try to break it down into reasonable chunks. And then when you start the goal, you want to think about what the specific task is. So say I was doing this at home, like I've got to clean up the bathroom, which is a job that doesn't bring a lot of motivation for me, but it's a specific task that I need to do. So how can I make it meaningful for me? Some people love cleaning the bathroom, but it's not meaningful for me. So maybe I'll listen to some music while I'm doing it. Maybe that will motivate me. Is it attainable, realistic? Realistic. Yes, I can do it. Reward. Especially if it's big goals that take time to complete. Have a reward in the middle, have a reward at the end. As I've mentioned before with some of you, we easily reward our pets when they've done a good job, and yet we will not reward ourselves. And it's not just the victories you should be rewarding, it should be the mundane and the tedious things, because that's going to help you maintain this goal. It's going to motivate you to finish it. And for those of you who especially have anxiety and depression, and you have all these goals and you keep failing them, if you keep the goals short and small and have rewards in them, you're going to feel motivated, you're going to feel empowered, because you got through this and you rewarded yourself for the work done. Especially for housewives, I encourage them to put this in, because we do mundane tasks and sometimes we don't get a lot of thanks. So if you're willing to reward your child or your pet, think about rewarding yourself. It's important.